He is the voice of TCU Athletics and also a great friend of the show. He himself has his podcast with what he does covering TCU, and he's the voice of TCU Athletics. Brian Estridge joins us on 365 Sports. Now, be honest, did you plan like some sort of a vacation trip the first weekend in December before the year started?
Yeah, we were going to spend 8 days in Gun Barrel City, which we always do over the holidays. And for some reason, we're going to have to cancel that resort this time. Now, I tell you what, fellas, I had no idea that we would be sitting here talking today with an undefeated TCU team. I think when we talked in preseason, or at least at Big 12 Media Days, I think I shared with you. I thought this was an 8-win team. I thought with the talent they had coming back, I was giving Sonny Dykes credit for 2. And I thought, okay, they could win 6 on their own. 2 with Sonny, that puts them at 8. I had no idea that we would be sitting here right now at 12-0.
And not only that, not getting your starting quarterback who they thought they were going to have right out of the gate, and it changed. I can't think of another story like Max Duggan from losing the starting job to rightfully having a spot in New York, hopefully next week.
The next closest one, fellas, ironically enough, is Will Howard at Kansas State. A guy who played a bunch last year. Martinez comes in, takes the job, gets hurt. Now Will Howard starting at K-State, and they're playing some of their best offense of the year. But you're right, though, Paul. I mean, for a guy that the storyline that has been Max Duggan this year, with the injury to Chandler Morris, it puts him in. And listen, fellas, let's be honest. He had lost the job. The last 2 weeks of camp, Chandler Morris was better than Max Duggan. As much as Max fans may like to disagree with that, and I'm one of them. It was obvious if you were out there every day, and you had a chance to see it. Hey, it was clear and it was evident that Chandler Morris was playing better than Max Duggan. So he loses the starting job. Then Chandler and he doesn't leave. A lot of guys would have left. A lot of guys would have been frustrated. A lot of guys would have pouted. He kept working. Then Chandler gets hurt, and then Max comes into the second half against Colorado. And then the rest is kind of history at this point. Doesn't get the job back, and it just played too well to even consider that. And so, yeah, it's been a great storyline. Max is one of those kids, and I probably have used this line with you guys before, and I apologize. He's one of those kids that you'd let babysit. I mean, he's just one of those kinds of guys. That he's a really good kid. He's a gentleman. He's a hard worker. He puts a lot of pressure on himself. I don't know how much fun he's having, but everyone else who's watching him is having a ton of fun.
How much fun is Sonny Dykes having?
Oh, man, you think he's having a blast. And I tell you, those around him are having fun. This has been, and we talked about this before, I think. It's such a different approach and just a different vibe. He's humble. He's transparent. He is considerate. He's just one of those guys that you like hanging out with, and he's been that way to everyone. And I think that's been so refreshing. He's been gracious too. That's the other thing and how he handled the transition. He was gracious to the previous staff and has been, but now all that's done. I mean, let's just face it. You're 12-0. This is your team. This is your accomplishment. This is your program. And I think everyone at TCU kind of feels that way now.
Yeah, it's a completely different animal than what was 2014 when Baylor and TCU and, who gets in, and Bob Bowlesby was kind of quiet in a way, and it was a bit, they already a rivalry, and there was each other's fan bases going at each other when they should have been mad at the playoff committee. How much more relaxed knowing is completely in their hands, in their own destiny, that they can win this weekend and maybe not even win, although you don't want to put that out there, and win and get to the college football playoff?
Boy, it's a totally different feel. I'll just be honest with you, David. I mean, it is, there is a confidence about it. Going in, we had heard rumblings that week, of the last game of the 2014 season that it really didn't matter what you did, you were going to fall. And it didn't make sense, but we had heard it enough that, okay, well, it's not going to happen. And when you go through that, when you go through the analytics program there in Grapevine of the Gaylord, they used 2014 as an example. And, based on the numbers, TCU wasn't supposed to be there if you just base it on the numbers. And so now you base it on the numbers, TCU is supposed to be there. There's some arguing that the numbers have TCU there even if they lose on Saturday. I'm not willing to roll that dice. But I think that there is a bit of comfort knowing that you do control your own destiny. Although I will say this, guys. Yes, TCU controls their own destiny, but Frog fans should be sending care packages to South Carolina Gamecock fans, who for the last 2 weeks eliminated teams that could have been flying the ointment for TCU and Tennessee and Clemson. In back-to-back weeks, South Carolina took out those two. So good for them, good for TCU that happened.
Brian, I think one of the other things the last 2 weeks has maybe shown us that, the early talk in the season was like, yeah, TCU's having a great run, but can they really hang with any of the teams? If you look at how everybody's played, especially in the top four throughout the entire season, I think these four teams TCU can hang with anybody.
Yeah, you like to think that. You got 5 wins against ranked teams. You've gone on the road and you've won at a red-hot Kansas team. You've won at Baylor. You've won at Texas. You dominated Texas, with 2 NFL running backs on their roster, and they had, 23 yards rushing. All you can do is play the teams in front of you. And if you take care of that business, then confidence starts to brew, and all of a sudden you do think you can play with anyone. But, yeah, you look at the matchups. Everyone says Georgia's head and shoulders above the pack. Okay, maybe. Michigan looked really good against Ohio State. That surprised me. I'll give you that. USC's coming on strong, but you know what? I'd play against their defense. I think the defenses that we saw this year at Baylor and at Iowa State and some of those places were just as good, if not better. And so I think with all of that being said, I think you may be onto something, Paul, that this may be a fairly evenly matched foursome.
Brian, I know there's probably some, not totally revealing, how everybody's doing, but injury-wise, how are the Frogs, knowing that the last, couple weeks in particular have been a little beat up?
Yeah, and glad you brought that up because I was just sitting here working on our pregame script for Saturday already. One of the things we're going to talk about is finally it feels like the offense is going to be back at full strength. Quentin Johnston last week, they set him out. Could have played, kind of what they were doing the couple of weeks prior to that where they would rest him during the week, play him on Saturday. He'd give you about 80%, get dinged up again, got to restart again. And so this week what they decided to do for the Iowa State game was just hold him out. And I think it made a big difference. In fact, Sonny talked about that. His practice on Tuesday was the best one he had in a month. And so I think you're going to see Quentin Johnston at full speed. I think you're going to see Kendre Miller at full speed. They held Darius Davis and Tate Barber out last week as well. They both got a couple of snaps, but no major play there. And so I think by almost preserving them last week, I think it'll extend their shelf life this week against Kansas State. A little banged up at linebacker with Johnny Hodges. Left the game with a hamstring, but I think the report got better and better as the week has gone along. So he potentially could go on Saturday. And other than that, you're in pretty good shape.
There's a lot of players. Quentin Johnston's one of the was a semifinalist for Biletnikoff, not a finalist,
right,
but he got that. Obviously, a lot of awards out today from the conference. Travius Hodges Tomlinson, a part of that Jim Thorpe Award finalist group, which would be awesome, a local kid here as well. But let's talk Max Duggan. I have a Heisman vote. I got the email this week. We have to vote by Monday. I will never vote until all the games are done. I know Army-Navy's the following week. Your thoughts about Max Duggan? Is there any question if he should be sitting in New York City when they announce the Heisman Trophy winner?
No question that he should be there. And I think you can make a legitimate case that he should win the trophy. I'll be honest with you. If you just look at the numbers, and I know you like numbers, he's got more than twice as many top 25 wins as Stroud and Williams combined. All right. And I'm just talking about this year. All right. When he plays top 10 defenses, if you just look at yards and games allowed against Iowa State, he put up, or points allowed, he put up 62 points against Iowa State, 3 touchdowns, 0 turnovers, wasn't sacked. When Stroud takes on Michigan and Iowa, he put up 77 total. But Max did it 62 in one game. All right. Williams hasn't faced a single top 10 defense all year. Fourth quarter comebacks. The Frogs have the 4th most points per game in the fourth quarter this year. The highest of any Heisman contender is the number that his team is putting up. He's been clutch. He's avoided negative plays on third down. All those things start to add up. And if we're going to base it on, you and I have a friend, Smokey and Randy Galloway, who, and you know this well, who used to say, watch the damn games.
Yeah.
If we're just watching the damn games, then I think you can make a case that Max Duggan is a Heisman Trophy winner.
I'm going to tell you one play, Brian. I know you got to go to another hit. The game against Baylor, and I brought this up a lot, it was like overshadowed. But on the drive that led to a field goal, or maybe it was the one that led to the field goal to win the game, he got away from Bryson Jackson
Yep.
tried to escape, and willed his way to the sideline that saved him down and probably 18 to 20 seconds. To me, that doesn't seem like a Heisman moment, but it surely could be, at least in my eyes, when I look at what I look at.
And it shows you that he's stronger than new rope, man. I mean, that's the other thing. He's tough as nails. He's strong. He worked his way out of that, and he's heady, and he's always heady. And that's what I think people don't recognize or give enough credit to, is the fact that, he makes the right decision. Oh, by the way, and he's playing for a new head coach and a new system. That's got to account for something as well, doesn't it, when Heisman Trophy balloters decide to fill it out.
Thank you, man. Appreciate your time. Good luck this weekend.
You guys are the best.
You too. Brian Estridge, voice of TCU Athletics, and his thoughts about Duggan, the